My name is Gary and I'm homeless. Up until 2 weeks ago, this is where I slept at the Manchester Crown Courts. We're under like this sheltered bit, it's like a little porchway. This is a place where I'll sleep before 7 o'clock because it's under shelter, so I'll stay here if it's raining or whatever. Just because I've got nowhere else to go, you know what I mean? I've been putting a bed and breakfast in the last week, so it's over the winter I've been on the streets. I had layers of clothes on, a couple of layers of clothes, couple of sleeping bags. It's hard to explain, but it's cold, that's all I can say, it's cold. When you walk down the street and it's cold, imagine that 100 times worse. Well, we're at the Booth Centre. It's an homeless centre for people who are on the streets or experience homelessness. My dad brought me up a single parent. He'd done everything, took us on holidays. After school we used to go drive down to Blackpool, just take us everywhere. So I had a really good upbringing, and I don't know where I went wrong. I went down the drug route, criminal route, and I've ended up homeless. You know what I mean? But I've got a sister who's got her own house. We could say she had the same birthday, you know what I mean? So I don't know where I've gone wrong. It could be something in my past, or it could be something what was already in my brain, I don't know.
Well, you do have a significant hurdle to get over, don't you? You have a mental health problem.
I do, yeah. It was only a couple of years, 5 years back or something, 7 years back, that it's written on doctor's notes that schizophrenia, psychotic something, I can't pronounce it properly. There was no specific moment where he was on drugs. It just came up and it was cannabis, and then it went on to acid and then amphetamine. I isolated myself in rooms. That's when the doctors and all that got involved. Well, it was only a week ago I finished rough sleeping. I've been in this bed and breakfast for a week now. I had my own flat. Everything was going all right. It was just had family problems, you know what I mean? Well, I just decided myself to move out of the flat and go rough sleeping. You know what I mean, I felt safer on the streets. I bumped into a French fellow who was rough sleeping at the time, and he took me to Pall Mall and we slept there rough sleeping that night. He showed me put cardboard on the floor, helps the coldness. Just little tips, you know what I mean? And
was it dangerous?
Very. I've been attacked, I've been robbed, I've had my fingers broke, I've had my medication, so it is hard out there, but when I'm on the streets I'll go on the outskirts of the city centre. Like, I'm from Salford, so I'll go to Salford train station, or I'll go to the Crown Courts, away from Piccadilly where all the madness is happening and that. Just have a couple of questions. Why in this day of age do people have to sleep on the streets? I mean, I can't understand where they're walking down the street and seeing so many friends sleeping in doorways. Greater Manchester's got a big project where they're going to stop rough sleeping by 2020, and a part of that is called a bed every night, and I want to know why it didn't work for me. Well, I'm here with Amanda Croom. She's the one who's got this day centre up and going. It used to be the cathedral. What's it been like since I've been here, you know what I mean? I know I've had my times and that, you know what I mean, but yeah, I'm an alright person, you know what I mean? I know I've got my mental illnesses and that, but can I come across in a positive way?
It's been brilliant having known you for the last few years, Gary, and it's fantastic how you've really taken part in all our activities here. So we've seen you go from, you know, really struggling and being on the streets, but still being prepared to volunteer. And you come in really early in the morning, don't you? So you're here at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're putting your apron on and helping out in the cafe, which is absolutely brilliant. I've got so much admiration the way you can sleep out, but then be willing to help other people, which I think is fantastic. and the way you've taken part in the art classes, and you've had quite a few exhibitions of your artwork now, haven't you? And we're really proud of what you've achieved. You're in a bed and breakfast, and hopefully soon you'll be in a flat. It's a struggle, isn't it? It's a struggle to be on the street.
I could only accomplish that by coming to a place like this, Amanda. I've never been given the chance of anything like this before. I've not been to another city, but has Manchester got a worse problem than anywhere else in the country with homelessness?
The problem of homelessness in Manchester is really big at the moment, but I think that's reflected in a lot of other places in the country as well. Particularly, there's been a big cut in public services, so the amount of money that the local council is given has been massively reduced, and that's cut drug services, it's cut mental health services, it's even cut the policing. The homeless services haven't been able to meet the demand, which is why Andy Burnham has launched his campaign.
Amanda, what would you class a bed every night, as Andy Burnham says it?
The objective, as I understand it, was to do just that, to provide people with a bed so people had an alternative to sleeping on the streets. The problem is, as you know, Gary, that people don't just want a bed, they really want a flat, they want their own front door, they want a home. We would feel that it's really not ambitious enough. And the bed every night is, in some ways, just providing night shelter, poor standard type of accommodation where people are having to share, often people who've got quite complex needs and have a whole range of different health problems, and putting all those people together sometimes can cause problems.
Gary told us that when he tried to use the scheme, he was offered a shared room full of strangers. He didn't feel safe. He was nervous about his medication being stolen while he slept and about being attacked. And he didn't want to be around drugs, so he actually decided to sleep rough. On another occasion, he couldn't get accommodation because the staff weren't set up to deal with his problems. He wanted to talk to Amanda about this.
Yeah, it's not a nice experience that you have to share. It can be 4 or 6 people, you know what I mean? I was in Seymour Road, I was sharing with 4 people. I mean, I didn't know him from Adam, you know what I mean? And just your personal belongings, you don't need the thieves, you don't need... It could be rape, you don't know who they are, you know what I mean? It could be anybody. It's not a very nice experience. Is it harder, Amanda, for people with mental illnesses to get this bed every night than people who don't take medication or who don't have complex needs?
There are some people who have a lot of mental health problems, a lot of drug and alcohol problems, maybe some quite challenging behaviour, and those people may be refused, and so we end up with the people who've got the most needs being on the streets for longest. And there isn't a bed every night for everyone. There's only a bed every night for some people.
We're the ones who need the support. If I had the chance to say to Andy Burnham, why are 3 and 4 people sharing again? Where's our dignity and all that gone? I don't think he's doing it right.
One of the people who helps Gary is Lydia. She's a mental health nurse with Manchester's mental health and homeless team.
Andy Burnham's obviously put the spotlight on homelessness. You know, he's declared a humanitarian crisis, which I think has helped awareness and importance of having services for homeless people. Homeless people have told me they feel safer sometimes sleeping on the street than using shared accommodation, such as emergency accommodation. And I think that's for various reasons. Some people may not want to share with a complete stranger, as any of us would have concerns about that. When you're asleep, it's quite a vulnerable time. Also, the homeless community is a community like any other, and people have their friends and their support system and buddies, and people who may, when they're sleeping rough, will stay awake and look out for them. They may have their dog, which is a great companion and keeps them warm, and they may prefer being in that place that they know they are safe, rather than being with strangers and an uncertainty about their safety. Charities and third sector services are doing a fabulous job supporting homeless people. I really rely on such organisations, really, building that trust with clients and then introducing them to myself. What I think is, coming from an NHS point of view, that perhaps charities and third sectors don't have easy access to is the resources that we have, the multidisciplinary team, our clinical expertise and training. And we have clinical supervision. You know, it can be very emotive working with homeless people. So we offer a lot of space to be able to talk about how we are affected and make sure that we don't then bring how we are affected into our relationship with the client.
I don't know what it is with the summertime. We seem to get a lot of people coming from other towns to the city. The winter time, you see the original, genuine homeless people, the ones who are really rough sleeping. You know what I mean? Like, I can come, like him who was just saying you then, he's not a rough sleeper. He's just doing it for money. He's just a beggar.
You just said he's not a rough sleeper, he's a beggar. Do you see that distinction a lot?
There's a lot of it in the city centre at the moment. It's because when you're in a crisis, what you're supposed to do. So the only way people are knowing is to beg without committing a crime, even though it's still vague and said, but it's not committing a crime when it's burglary, shoplifting or whatever. So people are just asking people on the street if you've got a bit of spare change, and the public are giving them. You know what I mean? But people are thinking it's to do with homelessness, and it's not. But a lot of it's to do with drug addiction, alcoholism. The next right, mate. I'm going to introduce you to Robin, who's a nice friend of mine. Robin was so good, she used to buy me brews every morning at 6 o'clock at McDonald's. She's a good friend, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. Everyone deserves a warm brew in the morning when you wake up, otherwise you're just grouchy all day.
Can I just ask you, how did you become homeless?
So we had a lot of problems with my neighbours, a lot of arguments going on. Then social services thought it was best to place my kids into my mum's care, so after that I didn't care about nothing. I lost my house, just went downhill, and then I just thought it was best to drink drugs hard. I didn't want to sleep on the street, so rather than sleep on the street I would rather walk around all night and be knackered and look drained. Town was the life.
But she's got out of it, she's doing well now, but she has been in the hostels, so she's a woman, she should be in priority, you know what I mean?
I come into the booth centre one morning, one of the members of staff, two of them actually, sat us down and said, we can get you somewhere today.
Was that splitting you up?
Yeah, but it's better than being on the street, being
yeah,
split
yeah.
up a lot better. So I was offered a place, a sit-up, and a sit-up is basically, it's a room with, I had another lady in it, but then there was a sit-up next door to me that had 6 men in one room. And the argument you could hear, it's just like men trying to control each other, and it did not work.
You might not see it in a good situation, but you're back with your kids now, Robin. You'll soon get your own place, so you've come a long way, Robin.
I've come a very far way. It's still a little tiny bit of a road to go down, but we're in a hotel, we've got my kids, I've got my partner, and there's nothing more I could ask for right now.
So Gary, we've been trying to get some answers about your questions regarding a bed every night. We've heard that Andy Burnham is happy to meet you, and you're going to be able to ask him a few questions.
Well, this is going to be great, yeah. I've got so many questions to ask him. Why the bed didn't work for me every night. I like to ask him a lot of questions.
Do you think he's looking forward to it?
I don't know. Does he know about me?
He will do.
He will do, right. To get an idea of rough sleeping in Manchester, I met Nick Buckley. He's Chief Executive of the charity Mancunian Way.
So I was a community safety manager, and for 2 years I was in charge of Manchester City Centre, looking at reducing crime, antisocial behaviour, and because of that I also looked at rough sleeping, street drinking and begging.
I was attacked on the streets. Do you think it's getting more violent?
Absolutely. One of the main reasons is competition. There's competition for begging spaces, there's competition to earn money, and when you get anybody, animals as well as humans, we all fight for resources, and that's why it's getting more violent.
10 years ago when you worked for the council, what was it like then?
I used to chair a rough sleeping meeting every 6 weeks, and we had 17 people sleeping rough in the city centre. And at that point, I knew all their names, first name basis, because there was only 17. And every single one of them, on a daily, weekly basis, was offered accommodation. But unfortunately, due to their mental health, they would refuse. But we kept working with them. Compare that to now. And the last time the council did a count in the city centre was in November last year.
The figures on that night were 123 rough sleepers in Manchester.
And there'd be more than that because you couldn't...
You didn't count me on that one. You didn't find me on that one. I sleep on the outskirts of the city centre. You just deal with the city centre, whatever. You don't go on the outskirts where there's a hell of a lot more rough sleepers than what you think.
No, absolutely. You only count the people you can see when you're walking down the street at early hours of the morning. You don't count the people who are hidden away. But when you compare that to previous years, it's still going up in Manchester. So why I think we have a major problem in Manchester compared to other cities our size, such as Liverpool and Leeds, is a series of events. So in 2011, austerity came. Manchester Council got huge cuts, and it's not their fault. They got huge cuts from the government, and they had to make some difficult choices. So they cut my team, they cut the street wardens, the police had cuts, so the police cut their police begging team. And then things slowly started getting worse. But for several years, the council would say to me, we don't have a problem. And then the general public saw what was going on. The general public then tried to help. So the general public were setting up Facebook groups, handing out sleeping bags, handing out food. At one point, that encouraged more people to come to the city centre because all of a sudden, everything you needed would be provided for you and you don't have to spend your money on it. Because nobody was being moved on when you sat down begging. So rather, 10 years ago, if you sat down in the city centre, you'd be moved on in 20 minutes. Now you can sit down for 18 hours. Nobody would even move you on at all. That deteriorated people's mental health, their physical health.
Just one thing there. Can I just say, that's what the public are seeing. People are sitting down and making loads of money. It's not like that at all. And I've had that situation where I'm sat there and someone will come up with half a burger or whatever. You know what I mean? You don't want to feel ungrateful, so you take it, but we're still human, you know what I mean?
You're right around, that this isn't a lifestyle choice. This destroys people, as you know.
Yeah.
About 18 months ago, we met somebody on Deansgate for the first time ever. We sat down chatting to them. He said to me, "Oh, people treat me better than a rat." And I went, what do you mean by that? I really don't know what you mean. He went, "Well, rats have to crawl through bins to find people's leftovers. I'm lucky, people give me their leftovers." So we've got people who, in our country, our fellow citizens, who the best they can say is, "I get treated better than a rat." It's disgraceful.
Looking at it in that way, it's very daunting. I don't look at it that way because I live this kind of life. But when people do look down at you and see you like that, you know what I mean? It is degrading and it's hard to get out of that situation.
I've just met Gary for a recording and he doesn't mind me saying, but he looked quite ill. He looked pale, much less upbeat. So I took some advice, we changed the plans, and he spoke to me in a cab going back to the Booth Centre. We've checked with you that you're okay to talk to us, Gary, but you're not feeling great today.
No, not at all. I pick medication up every 2 days for my schizophrenia because I'm not allowed more medication than 2 days. Now and then I'll go to the chemist in the morning and the electronic prescription's not been sent down. So now I'm lowering my medication. I'm not having meds this morning, so I'm not feeling 100%, so I'm not 100% in interviewing today. It's just that level, keeping me level straight, you know what I mean? So we give it an hour. When I go back there, they'll phone back up and see if it's been sent over. It's up and down.
Is it hard to describe how that makes you feel when you miss some?
Yeah, my belly turns, my depression's low, I'm not in a talkative mood, I don't want to associate with people, you know what I mean? So then I feel like I'm isolating myself and that, but I don't want to get ill again.
And Gary's not alone. Lots of Lydia's patients have problems taking their prescribed drugs.
If you're homeless, where do you keep your medication? Some medication can have a sedating side effect. So some people might be targeted or bullied as well. That's another risk. If other people know they have a lot of medication on them, where do you store it safely? And how much can you carry around at one time? And what happens if you have 3 different appointments that day, one for housing, one for healthcare, one for whatever else, and you need to go and pick up your medication? It's hard to prioritise all those things, and most people may go for the housing option and then they've missed their medication to pick up, but that's an important part of their well-being.
Nick Buckley used to run a team which kept in touch with rough sleepers in the middle of Manchester, so Gary had a question for him.
Andy Burnham's got this plan that he'll end rough sleeping by 2020. What do you think of it?
It's better than nothing. It's better than what we had before. At least it's taken some people off the streets. For me, it's slightly clouded in secrecy. It's not as open as it should be about what's happening. We've spoken to people who have presented and then been told they don't meet the criteria. I thought the criteria was you're sleeping on the streets, but...
Exactly. The real people who's on the streets, who really need it, the people with mental health issues, we're not getting put in them places.
That's an excellent point. I think I'd like to extend on that. We have lots of different projects, especially government projects, and they have targets, which is great, and they're trying to achieve certain outcomes. But what we've always found is a lot of them look for the low-hanging fruit. So who are the easiest people to help to get our figures up? And this project, Bed Every Night, really should be concentrating on entrenched rough sleepers, again, in city centres around Greater Manchester. And my fear, we get figures on Twitter every now and again, 100 this and 100 that, but I would put money on the vast majority of them were not entrenched rough sleepers. They were quick, easy fixes. Andy Burnham says he's trying, and he is trying, but we deserve better from our politicians. I don't want politicians who try, I want politicians who succeed.
The Community Secretary James Brokenshire has responsibility for homelessness. We asked if he was willing to talk to Gary, but we were told he was unavailable, so the government gave us a statement. Everyone deserves a safe and secure place to live. We are committed to reducing all forms of homelessness, and our Rough Sleeping initiative is providing an estimated 2,600 more bed spaces and 750 additional specialist support staff this year. The number of vulnerable people sleeping on our streets has fallen for the first time in 8 years, but we know we need to do more. We're investing £1.2 billion to tackle homelessness, including £100 million for rough sleeping, as well as funding specialist homelessness mental health support through the NHS.
I'm Councillor Sue Murphy, Deputy Leader, Manchester City Council. I think Gary's experience is one that we've learnt a lot from, but for the next iteration of it, because we do want to carry it on all year if we can, we recognise that we have to do something different for people with the most complex needs. That's about providing more support, and providing more support for things like mental health, actually where they are. We get around 80 people coming in a day. That can be people who are sleeping rough, people who are at risk of eviction. I walk through the Rates Hall every morning where they come in, and every morning there's somebody with all their belongings in suitcases. It's where austerity is at its sharpest, I think. So as well as people struggling financially, there's also lack of access to services. Council's funding, for example, has been cut by 40%. We're expecting more cuts to come. And that means the support that we would want to be able to provide for people isn't readily available.
I'm in the centre of Manchester for our interview with Andy Burnham, and fair play to the Mayor, he had completely agreed to meet with Gary. I think in this programme we've heard that Gary leads a really complicated and a really difficult life, and it's time for the interview and he's not here. So I'm going to go in and see if I can put Gary's questions to the Mayor, and we'll see if they're happy to talk to me.
Hi, how are you? Okay, nice to see you.
Thanks for meeting us. I know this is a little bit different.
No, honestly, it's not a problem. I just feel, would you relay a message? I'd say I hope he's okay.
Everyone that we've spoken to has really praised the ambition, but Gary's experience was that he has schizophrenia, he's a recovering drug addict, and he felt that some of the voluntary organisations providing emergency accommodations just weren't set up for his level of need. So will that change? Has it changed?
Well, I think it's a very fair challenge, and we've got to learn from Gary's experience, and I'm sorry it wasn't a good one. Yes, it can change. I think the first thing for me to say is Bed Every Night kind of was done at short notice. You know, we decided in the middle of last year to say, look, can we do something better this winter? And it was a bit all hands to the pump. You know, who's prepared to help? And let's be honest, it's never going to be right for everybody. You know, particularly those with higher levels of need, I think might find that the Bed Every Night provision is not the right provision for them.
One of Gary's experiences was that he went into an emergency accommodation. He has medication on him. He didn't know the people who were around him in a multiple occupancy room, and he opted to sleep on the streets. And I think I would too in that situation. Would you?
yes, possibly I wouldn't have stayed if I didn't feel it was right. So we've never claimed that it's perfect, but we are doing something that is way beyond what anywhere else is doing. And I have to stress, this wasn't sort of public service sort of strategizing and delivery in the normal way. This was a decision taken in July 2018 to go for a much higher level of provision for the coming winter. And I regret none of that, because it is right for a lot of people. Over 1,500 people have been supported by A Bed Every Night. About a third of those people have moved from A Bed Every Night to a fixed address.
Do you have to be careful of the fact that those people might be the easiest to help? Maybe they're not like Gary, because if social investors are involved in the scheme, they are paid by results. Are they tempted to go for the easiest cases?
I think there is a risk of that, and it's not something that I would want to see. But yes, there potentially is a risk. But I think what we're getting to, and your questions are fair, and Gary's challenge is fair, and I absolutely take both on board. What you need is other routes for people alongside it. So we are a Housing First pilot with the support of the government, and we are very much now working with the National Health Service here as a partner, and we are now creating a different route, which is a home plus intensive additional support. And I would imagine that would be a better route for somebody like Gary, perhaps, than Bed Every Night. So I think it's about having a sophisticated approach that allows different routes for different people. But I do believe that Bed Every Night will always be a kind of a big part of that.
It's just them little steps you got to keep on taking one by one. It looks like I'm going forward now. Like the last hostel I was in, it was all over the place. The heroin, the methadone, the spice, everything, it's all in my face. When it's in my face, I'm dead weak. I seem to use. But when it's not there, I'm clean. So I was just keeping my head clear and straight, you know what I mean? You still need a bed every night for people like me, not a bed every night just for people who's well.